Cool. So, I'm Robert. So I'm going to be talking about a model we created called Motivate. And the idea here is that we can kind of incorporate social norms into this kind of configurable model of commuting behaviour. So the decision to perform commuting behaviour. So to give a bit of background, right, active travel policies typically frame walking and cycling as good. So they're good for your kind of mental health and physical health as well. So you reducing obesity, the risk of cardiovascular disease and that sort of thing. And cars is bad, right? So there's a risk of road traffic injury, there is noise and air pollution as well. So we obviously want to kind of move people right from using cars to kind of walking and cycling more. But the perceptions of acceptable commute mode kind of vary by different groups. So, some groups view it as, quite happily will walk and cycle, but others kind of are quite against that. And social norms may kind of explain this difference. So I've got this kind of excerpt from the Daily Telegraph this summer saying, expand congestion charge zones and tolls to force drivers out of cars, says Boris Johnson's advisors. It's clearly kind of an interesting kind of forcing people out of their cars, forcing them to do things they don't necessarily want to do, to kind of use more active modes of travel. So it's kind of led to this research question, which are, well, what interventions may be successful at increasing active travel? So how do we get people to kind of be more active? And I think to do that, we need to understand better the decision-making process for commuters. So, when I wake up in the morning, how do I decide how to commute? How do I decide to kind of drive to work, cycle to work, walk to work, or take public transport? And that means it isn't about traffic flow. It's not about, I leave my house, I take a left down West Street, head down Hertford Road. It's not about that. It's about how do I actually decide what to do? And to do this, we're incorporating into the decision, we look at peer and neighbour effects. So how do what my friends do, what my neighbours do affect what I do? Choice and habit. So what's available to me, and how habitual am I? Do I want to just do the same thing every day, or would I like to kind of walk to work once a week? And access and support. So how supportive is the environment? How good are the cycle paths? How frequent are the buses? That sort of thing. And what we've done is we've created a kind of fully configurable model. So you can kind of, we've modeled it on one location, but you could kind of take a different location, plug it into the model and see what the results are. And that also allows us to kind of explore the parameter space and see, well, if we change some inputs, how does that affect the output? So to get onto the methods, we're going to talk briefly a little bit. We're modeling here Waltham Forest. This is a North-Eastern Borough of London. It's right on the outskirts of London, and it's had kind of significant investment through something called the Mini Holland schemes to try and kind of boost people's active journeys. So improving the physical environment to make it a bit more like Holland, so kind of more cycle paths, better crossings, more focus on pedestrians and cycling at the expense of cars. So to kind of give some assumptions, every day, an agent can do one of four things. They can walk, cycle, take public transport, or drive to work. And as I said, we modelled this loosely on Waltham Forest, a North-Eastern London Borough. And we used a kind of statistical approach called micro-simulation to ensure that electoral wards, which we'll call neighbourhoods here, match real-life things on things such as car ownership, commute distance, and commute distance. And we use kind of real-world data from the UK Household Longitudinal Survey and the 2011 census to do this. So I've kind of put this little diagram here on the right, where we kind of show that there was a borough and there's 20 neighbourhoods in it. It's cut off the zero there, sorry about that. So there's 20 neighbourhoods, and in total there's 111,166 agents. This is the number of kind of people who commute in the Waltham Forest, number of kind of working age adults who are in work. And that means there's about 5,500 agents per electoral ward or per neighbourhood. So now we've got an environment, right? So inside the environment, there are a number of things, and these will affect the behaviour of an agent. So we have the capacity of a mode. So how many cars can there be on a street? How many buses are there? How many people can fit on the tube train? And once you've exceeded that capacity, there's congestion, right? And this is a negative influence. So if you go out to work in the morning and you spent 3 hours in traffic and it was really horrible, the next day maybe you're not going to want to drive because it was so bad the day before. There's also the supportiveness. So that's kind of thinking about how good are the roads, how good are the cycle paths, how good are the pavements, and that's an influence on behaviour. So, you know, if you have to cycle on really, really busy, dangerous roads, you're maybe not going to want to cycle. And then the weather as well, right? So if it's raining, you're probably less likely to want to walk or drive to work. And we've got some agents, right? So we've got 111,000 agents in total, and these belong to a number of things. They've got a social network, and this kind of connects agents who influence their decision making. So this is, you know, what do my friends do? If I cycle to work, and John at the office sees me cycle, how does that influence what John wants to do? You know, we're influenced by our peers. We want to fit in, and then we've got this kind of mobility culture, and you can kind of see that as you know, wanting to kind of fit in. So there's some people who are really into cycling, right? And there's some people who are really into driving, and some people are just kind of really into being active. And it's you wanting to kind of align yourself with those cultures. Then there's a neighbour network. So it's not just your friends that influence what you do, it's your neighbours. If you're walking around the street, and, you know, let's say you live in Cambridge where lots and lots of people cycle, and you're just walking along the street and you're seeing these people cycle, it's going to make you more likely to cycle, right? So it's what your friends do is the most influential, your mobility culture is in the middle, and then what your neighbours do is kind of the least influential. So what your friends do is obviously going to be far more important than what your next door neighbour does. So then we create all these agents, right? And we give them a range of characteristics. They've got a commute to fill. Do they have a local commute? You know, very close, easily walkable. So they have a city commute, so kind of within the borough of Waltham Forest. So you could maybe cycle it, but you know, walking's pushing it, or beyond, even further. You know, so kind of there, walking and cycling really aren't particularly feasible. Then we've got agents are given assigned a neighbourhood, so they live somewhere. They are assigned to a social network, mobility culture, and they're also kind of given some psychological variables. So how suggestible are they to their friends and neighbours? How much do they want to adhere to their norms? So this is where the social norms kind of come in. Those three things are shown in the last slide, where you've got the social network, the mobility culture, and the neighbours. All of those together forms your norm. It's what there is societal pressure to perform. And how much does the agent want to adhere to that? Some people will really want to adhere to their norms. They really, really want to fit in. For other people, it's less important to them. And then there's this kind of inertia and resistance to change. So how much do I want to do the same thing every day? Yeah, people generally don't want to like wake up one morning, I'll walk today, I'll cycle the next day, I'll take the bus the day after and drive to work. People are quite consistent. So we're modeling that as well. And then the weather sensitivity. So how much does the rain matter to you? Some people don't care, right? Will happily go out and cycle in the rain every day. For other people, they're much more unlikely to cycle in the rain. We also give neighbourhoods a kind of supportiveness and capacity as well. So then each agent goes to work each weekday, and each weekday they kind of calculate a budget. So this is how willing they are to commute. So this is the effect of norm, habit, and congestion. So what does society want them to do? How much is their habit influencing them? And what's the congestion like on the previous day? So if it's really bad, they're going to have less of a budget. And we rank this. So from top to bottom, so cycling might be the best, driving might be the worst. And we calculate a cost as well. So this is the distance, the environmental supportiveness, and the weather. And we rank this in reverse. So if it's a higher cost, you're lower down the ranking. We then add these two ranks together and choose a maximum. So if you've got the kind of highest budget and lowest cost, that's going to be the one you're going to choose. So to get on to some results, we did some experiments, right? So after the first year, we banned cars on Wednesdays. For every Wednesday, cars were just not an option. And it allowed us here to kind of test a kind of extreme policy scenario, but that's the benefit of these models, right? We can test things that maybe we can't do in the real world yet. And then we ran the simulation for 4 more years. We did over 200 runs, and this created more instability. So if you look at this graph on the right, the car-free day scenario is this blue line at the top, and the control line is the one at the bottom. So there's many more active journeys, but it's much more unstable. So it's kind of, there's a bit more difference day to day than there was in the control. And in the control, for every active journey, there was 0.091 active journeys. So the odds are quite low. There's not very many active journeys for inactive journeys. But the odds ratio, so in the car-free day scenario, there were 77.7% greater odds of active journeys. So to conclude, I think thinking about norms and habits here are key. So that's why we go back to this last slide. The car-free days is sustained. So even when we're on a Wednesday, it doesn't drop right back down to the control scenario. It stays higher. That's because the norms kind of enforce it. Like you want to continue doing what you're doing. You want to continue fitting into your friends, and that enforces the behavior change. And so the norms and habits are key to understanding this decision to commute. And it allowed us to destabilise the convention of commuting by car. So we disrupted it by preventing the effect of habit. So on the car-free days, you can't act in accordance with your habit, which then leads to a change in the norms. And this is useful, I think, as a simulator of potential policies that may affect kind of commuting-related norms. So I think there's some limitations and some kind of future work. We don't currently use calibrated built environment data. The obvious next step is to do so. We don't consider personal journeys because they're much more varied. They happen at different times of the day, going to different places, that sort of thing. Just don't consider what causes you to go out and buy a bike or buy a car. But that's it for me. So thank you very much.
Great, thanks very much, Robert. That's excellent. Well done. Sorry, my closed captions are on, so if they're annoying you, might have to turn them off locally, as I can't seem to turn them off from my Zoom account at the moment. Okay, any questions for Robert? Either pop them in the chat, or I'll try and monitor the list of participants to see if I can see a raised hand. No. Oh, Erica.
Hello, my name is Erica. I'm born in Bradford, but I used to be in the MRC epidemiology unit and looking at some active trouble before. So it's quite interesting presentation, Robert. I really enjoy it. My question is like, it's a simulation of the Wednesday. If you change to Friday, for example, do you think the result will change, or is it stay the same? Depends on the dates that you actually kind of ban car-free days.
So here I think it would be the same, because one of the kind of simplifications we made in the model is that kind of the last week, the kind of last work days behavior influences an X. So like Monday's influenced by Friday, Friday's influenced by Thursday, and so on. So I don't think, yeah, changing it wouldn't make a difference, I don't think, in this. But potentially in the real world, yeah, it would make a difference.
Thank you.
Erica. Good question. Anyone else? I'll ask a question, Robert. So the model is kind of open and configurable, I'm guessing. Yeah. So do you have any other plans to look at any other types of interventions? Because I'm guessing, you know, this is an extreme scenario, isn't it? So are there any things that might be more likely to be implemented within the real world that you could look at here?
So I think you could kind of extend this car-free day scenario and say, well, what if, you know, you made it for kind of not the whole population, but like, say, like, you could take it away from, so some places, particularly like Camden, has like parking permits, so like part of the population just can't own a car because they can't park it. So you could basically model that and say, well, okay, what if we had like 30% of people don't have access to a car, like 30% more on a, you know, on an ongoing basis. So like removing the cars from some people, I think would be kind of something interesting to look at.
Great, thanks. I guess kind of one of the areas that's kind of quite contentious at the moment is the kind of low traffic neighbourhoods. In particular in London, there's a lot of conflicting evidence, and a lot of, you know, interest groups that have quite entrenched views both ways about whether they're good or bad. So I think that'd be a really interesting thing to look at. Okay, great. Thanks, Robert.